I'm Rudy Ruiz, and it's great to be back with you to explore the book Stealing Fire and to discuss some ways we can better understand and control our minds to achieve greater peace and fulfillment in our lives. In our last discussion, we talked about some of the connections between three types of non ordinary states of consciousness: the flow state, the meditative state, and the psychedelic state. At the end of our discussion, we talked about some of the dangers of taking shortcuts to get to these other levels of consciousness and the value of working toward them. Today, we dig into part two of the book, where we look at what author Stephen Kotler calls the four forces of ecstasy: psychology, neurobiology, pharmacology, and technology. Kotler suggests that recent advances in these four areas and the work of influential authors such as Eckhart Tolle have made it possible for the general public, not just mystics or only the most elite of athletes and artists, to reach non-ordinary states of consciousness, including flow, on a more regular basis. Before we begin, I'd like to give each of my guests the opportunity to reintroduce himself and to share a little bit about how his work and experiences connect with one or more of these non-ordinary states of consciousness. I'd like to begin with Bear Bennett.
Hi, Bear Bennett, owner of the Monster Lab. It's a strength and conditioning gym in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm also a wrestling coach for City Kids Club Milwaukee. A lot of what I do is involved with finding and learning how to get into a flow state. A lot of the work that I do is not your normal workout. It's not like we're sitting in front of mirrors lifting weights. Very intense circuit training. You get pushed to the absolute limit every single time. So a lot of what I do and what I teach is about mindset and making sure that you know what you're getting into and how far you're going to go.
Excellent. I also want to introduce our producer for today, Robert A. Douglas.
Hey, everyone. I'm Robert A. Douglas, and I think one of the most important pieces for me in terms of connecting with the non-ordinary states of consciousness, like is what's covered in part two of the book, is really tapping into that flow state in a continuum like we talked about on the last call. And for me, being able to, without getting into too much of the conversation today, being able to identify with some places in my life where I've been broken down and kind of broken through. And that's really helped to optimize that peak experience, I guess, in terms of when I'm trying to couple it with my personal growth. I go through things and then I realize that there's another side on the other end, and then that aids in my personal growth, which aids in my peak performance, right? Aids pushing me to keep going. So that's me, guys.
Thank you, Robert. And Robert and I are over here on the East Coast. We've got Bear in the Midwest, and I also want to introduce out on the West Coast my college wrestling coach, Jay Jackson.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jay Jackson. I'm a high school teacher, and I also work with Spartan Race on a curriculum and a process, and both deal with flow because ideally, as I want to, as a teacher, I want my kids to work hard and be happy, and flow state is the ideal way to do that, and it's the ideal way to be happy and work hard as a teacher. When it comes to working with Spartan, once again, I've got a curriculum and a process to have people promote discussion, for people to talk about how to best take on a challenge. And if you put all those things together, I think it leads to flow state. So that's kind of what I'm interested in, and that's what I'd like to do.
Excellent. Also wanted to introduce my friend, also here in Maryland, Mustafa Wahid.
Hey everyone, Mustafa, also go by Moose, founder and CEO of Transitioning You. So we help college students graduate using their cell phones. So part of the beauty behind doing this is building an organization. You have to both think of your own personal flow state and also think about how do you facilitate others to get into flow. And for working with institutions of higher education, a lot of it is students are on their journey from their first year of college until the end of college, of going through those ideas of kind of breaking down, if you will, to get to that point of breakthrough that eventually gets to graduation. And so a lot of my work is tied into, well, okay, how do you learn? And putting a lot of those pieces of the puzzle together for them or sharing it with them so they can start to have conversations about flow that lead to productivity that eventually lead them to walking across the stage.
Excellent. We also have another Midwesterner here, my brother, Aaron Ruiz. Not sure if we're hearing you yet.
Oh.
All right, while he's getting his audio straightened out, I'll tell you a little bit more about my connection here and how we got this all started, both in terms of my work in education as well as my work as a coach, kind of a high-level coach, both from little kids all the way up through the college level. I just realized that there are a lot of things that I've experienced in my life that have been helpful as I've shared with others how to make the most of their potential. And so this book discussion is a chance to share some insights and get insights from others from, like I said, different walks of life and from across the country around how folks can better understand their mind and their brain and how to master their minds to reach their highest potential and fulfillment. So today we're going to dig in, like I said, on part 2, and we've got a few things to talk about. Covers a lot of ground, like we mentioned, in terms of those 4 forces of ecstasy. But what we want to really highlight today, and I think one thing that Aaron has brought up to me that he wanted to share as part of the intro is just the fact that ideally we're in these higher levels of consciousness and these higher states of thinking and being as much as possible throughout our life. We don't want to get hung up by our inner critic. We want to make sure that we are just like we were as a child, just being curious, exploring, and improving ourselves and those around us every day. And so some of the things that we're going to be talking about today are going to be peeling back some of those layers and trying to get back to what we were kind of created, if you will, and called to be. And so first of all, I want to dig in and ask Jay actually to share a little bit. In the book, Kotler talks about the recent history that led to this greater understanding of how to achieve flow, including what's been mentioned so far already, that breakdown to breakthrough approach. I'm wondering, Jay, do you see a connection there with our sport of wrestling?
And then I left and got my teaching credential and my master's, and then taught for a couple of years. And then Stanford coaches called me back and said, we've got a really good recruiting class around your weight. Are you interested? And that was appealing to me, so I went back. And this recruiting class was incredible. There were 5-6 guys right around my weight, and all really good wrestlers. And I thought initially when I was wrestling, I was better than them. But as they got older, and by the time they got to be juniors and seniors, then it started to concern me. And I was worried that if they beat me, then they weren't going to listen to me anymore. And so instead of just wrestling and enjoying the process, I started thinking about I gotta beat these guys. So when I was wrestling them, I shut everything down. I wouldn't try stuff, and that was my breakdown. I wasn't enjoying it. They weren't enjoying it because I was just sitting there doing nothing, trying not to get scored on, and it just wasn't good for everybody. And that was my breakdown period. I said I've got to fix some stuff because I'm a coach. I got to make them better, and I got to make it more fun for myself. So in that particular situation, I just finally said, all right, I'm just going to go for stuff. I'm just going to enjoy the moment, not care about winning, losing, not care about giving up points. And for me, it was more fun. Did I give up points? Yeah, but I didn't care. They were having more fun because now I was wrestling more and everyone's learning more in the process. So I had to get to that point where it's just like, you just feel like this is awful. I'm not having fun at all. And then that led to me deciding like, I've got to change some things. And it was also because I was watching, we had a couple wrestlers on the team that were really good at trying stuff all the time. And I looked at them and said, gosh, they're having a lot of fun and I'm not. How do I fix this? So that's what it is for me. Now I'll also add with wrestling, with the sport of wrestling, that you have to work at things. You have to practice your moves so that in the match, when it'll assist you in getting the flow state. You don't have to think about, how you do the shot. If I practice it hundreds or thousands of times, all of a sudden I can just do it in the match and I can start flowing with things. So it's that flow that's going to make you happy. But if you couple it with effort, then I think it can lead you a little bit faster to a flow state. My 2 cents.
Excellent. Great insights, Jay. Thank you. And I do want to mention, these book discussions are one of a, set of resources and kind of, packages that we've been putting together as a team to try to help others, achieve their highest potential. Another set of resources is a different set of, videos essentially that a number of us have been working on. Want to give a little plug. Aaron just recently edited, and we just released yesterday a new video on an example of a flow state. So we'll drop that link out to you in a little bit, but I will use that as a chance to give Aaron a chance to introduce himself.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
We're good.
Hey, so I'm Rudy's younger brother. I typed up some notes to introduce myself. Basically, so I'll do it kind of quick because I want to dig into some other parts like along the way. But like for an insertion point, I'm just gonna say, for me, it was like this what do you call it? Traumatic event, right? So like for me, that was at the end of 2004, and what happened there was a car crash, and it happened to be, and this is a thing too. It ends up being like for a long time. So it just was 16 years ago, 2 weeks ago or something like that. So it was like a long time, like almost a third of my life ago. And then it took a while. So it feels to me like I got bopped on the head. For a long time, I felt like I got bonked on the head. I got knocked down into my own self. And then I'm just now coming out of it. And it took me so many years to even come back out of my own thoughts. And there's days there, Rudy, I don't know, maybe mom told you, probably not. There was days, because I've been, okay, here we go. Insertion point, 2004, December 2004, the girl dies. I wrote this in my notes. My girlfriend, Jess, at the time, I had met her when I was in 8th grade. We did a dance at the 7th and 8th grade dance. I lost my virginity to her. I gave it to her when I was 17. So that was like, I don't know, 2000, literally to the year 2000. And then in 2004, we were coming home from Christmas shopping, and this drunk driver hit us, flipped the car over, killed her instantly. I didn't realize it until I woke up in the hospital. They go, "Hey, what's the year? What's the day? What's your name? Who are you? Where are you?" I don't know. I'm like, "I'm Aaron. It's 2001. I was a couple years off or a couple months off. It was something. No idea what's going on." And then, so that's our insertion point. Okay. And then 2006, no bullshit. March 2006, I married someone else. And then before that, I started drinking hard. And then 2010, I got divorced. And then a few months later, it's Halloween. I get fucking shit. Pardon my language. I get really drunk, arrested for a second DUI, battery to an officer. I told them I was gonna sodomize them and murder them. They charged me with battery to an officer, 6 months Huber Law. My sister Lana, fortunately, paid for me to go to MATC to get out on Huber Law. That's the kind of sister we have. I get out of jail. Well, first of all, before I even went in to serve my sentence in 2011, my girlfriend at the time, right now, I have this coffee shop called Avenue Coffee. My girlfriend, Sarah, who I own the shop with, right before I went into jail in 2011, she's inboxed me on Facebook. I'm not trying to plug Facebook, but I'm saying she inboxed me, "When you get out of jail, we should get coffee." The whole time I was in jail, I just thought about her. The whole time I was in jail, I thought, it took me a couple of nights in there, and you're like, what the fuck happened? I know I was punching the wall in the drunk tank. I was breaking things in the drunk tank, but now I'm in oranges. I'm wearing a uniform. I've got an armband. I got a number. There's keys. I'm in jail, bro. So you're in there and you're just like, and then there's a guy, here's a story. I'm sorry if I'm steamrolling you guys, but here's the thing. I go in there I meet a younger guy. They call him Pale Rooster. First of all, everyone does get named in jail. Mine was Rico Suave. Pale Rooster's name is John because he had a mohawk, a skinny white kid. And he starts telling me about his life, my first day in there. And I'm like, okay, all right, I'll talk to you later. I got to go. And where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? I walk to the back of the room. There's a bunk. And I look at the bunk. And I'm like, shoot, I got to go talk to this idiot. But then he ends up being one of my best friends in there. And then so the first night or two, you're up all night. Like I was up all night. I started writing out my life. What happened? What all happened? Why am I in jail now? And that, to Rudy's point, I guess last week, I'm sorry I missed it, but like about self-isolation, what I told myself when I was in jail was, first of all, I was visualizing being with Sarah. That was my hope. The other thing was I knew from being younger, and this other whole story we can get into another time, about self-isolation, which I understood at a young age, just like my brother did. For me, it was stuff like, it was video games, it was also music, it's also drawing, it's all those things. And especially like for children, if you guys have kids, they're in the flow state when they're doing any of those things, especially for school. If you're in gym, art, music, you can channel you can be in the flow state at school. And that's what I did too. Okay. I forgot. You guys can have the floor now. I feel like I said a lot.
We're going to circle back on a couple of those things in a little bit, but appreciate your sharing. Want to switch over to Mustafa. Mustafa, Kotler's history in the opening chapter of this section breaks down how some of the ways of thinking, meditating, better understanding ourselves used to be viewed as like essentially Eastern mysticism, but in the last few decades have kind of been adapted to America's capitalist mindset. Stealing Fire as a book highlights a lot of the Silicon Valley and other tech leaders using these kind of adapted techniques to, in some cases, do what they describe as even optimizing human capital. Do you think that this kind of cultural adaptation detracts from the type of personal transformation that can be achieved through the meditative state?
Yes and no. From the perspective of, it's great that certain things like meditation or even something as Eastern as yoga has become more mainstream. And, through brands and companies like Lululemon bringing it to the forefront, or even as they talk about Google engineers going into float tanks to get into flow state, it leads to people being more productive and happier from that perspective. So I'm happy to see that come to fruition. Now, does it also take away from personal development in the sense of, you can get and start doing meditative practices without really understanding the philosophy behind why you're doing it, or understanding a unique perspective that allows you to really steep yourself in the history, which then allows you to really engage with the culture, I think has been missed and in certain parts divorced from that. And really not allowing those traditions that were there, and people who have really steeped, let's say, decades, if not millennia, really honing these practices, and without giving them a nod, it becomes very difficult. So I think there are components to that where it's great because now it's more mainstream, but the challenge is what part is mainstream, and can we bring more to the forefront as you're building a company or an organization? I think the answer is yes, and we're seeing it now.
Good insights. I appreciate that. So, Kotler's use of the term ecstasy throughout, the first half of this book, makes it really no surprise that sex is a topic also of Stealing Fire, as society over the last few decades has begun discussing sex in ways that had been taboo for so long. And Kotler illustrates this by talking about the popularity of the book 50 Shades of Grey as an example. Again, Kotler makes clear the connections between, the 6 kind of happy brain chemicals that are released through different types of sex and the heightened states of consciousness that we've been discussing so far. He even points to examples of faith-based groups' recognition of the connections between couple sexuality and spirituality. Another aspect that we've talked about a little bit only is in terms of non-ordinary states of consciousness, psychedelic state. And so, Aaron, probably one of the most controversial aspects of this book is Kotler's discussion of what he calls microdosing psychedelics to achieve these non-ordinary states, really throughout history. But he also shares a recent example from the field of psychology where it's being used to help with healing from trauma. And although he affirms that research shows microdosing MDMA, as an example, has worked to help veterans heal from post-traumatic stress disorder, he also talks about how natural methods like surfing have been used as alternatives to inducing the flow state and achieve similar healing effects for those that are working through PTSD. The research also showed continued improvement for those veterans who meditated as part of their treatment, and a return of symptoms for those who did not meditate. I was wondering, Aaron, what connections you might see here with your work and experiences in music and the arts as it relates to healing.
Yeah, so my whole story, so yeah, back to that insertion point of 04. So for me, the psychedelics help me get to some it's whatever, help me get to some realizations, but also it was other stuff. It's like I said in the notes that I prepared for today. It's like it was a lot, and some of it was actually, it was music. It was a lot of being in that meditative state, in that I don't know if it's a theta state, but it was the lower brain waves. So basically, right after, well, let me go back. I'll get back to the insertion point. However, earlier than that, in the narrative that I had been telling myself, I was like, not only had I gotten in this car crash, before that, I was telling myself that, see, I've been getting straight A's up until 6th grade. And Rudy and I had like a healthy like competition, and we were all both getting straight A's, and like we were both looking at colleges. I'm 5 years younger than him, and I was looking at Berkeley when I was like 11 or something. So the thing what happened was, and this has to do with developmental stages and like perspective. So like I'm in 6th grade. It's 1990, whatever. And I'm like, okay, straight A's. And they go, when I got to Cudahy Middle School, and this is after moving from the ghetto to the suburbs, and then up from a black school to a white school, not to be crass, but to go from a black school to a white people school. And then now I'm the Mexican kid from the hood. And that's the persona I gotta be. But I still was getting straight A's. So then 6th grade, straight A's, they go, look it, we did the projection. This guy, when it gets to be his senior year, we're gonna have to ship him to MATC, or he's gonna have to skip a grade. And for a child, and for me at 11 or 12, whatever, I was like, you're a superhero. I'll be a GD superhero to be a skip a grade. You're gonna skip me a grade. And I thanked God, and I thought everything was peachy. And then, but my parents, yada yada yada, they're like, you're gonna go to this private school. And so for the longest time, I told myself, not only did I lose my girlfriend to this car crash, I had been replaying my narrative, telling myself that I wasn't supposed to be at that private school. I kept telling myself I was supposed to be somewhere else. If I would have been in Cudahy, this never would have happened. And so that was a thing where it's like, it's self-inflicted. And I think people don't realize a lot of times the prison you put yourself in. I was blaming myself. I said, if I never would have been attracted to this girl, she'd be alive right now. If I never would have, and then being brought up, being like told that sexual thoughts are bad, I thought, not only are you going to go to hell for having bad thoughts, you're going to go to extra hell because she's going to hell because she, and I'm just like berating myself like for years, like you shouldn't have been at that school. You messed up. And that was all self-inflicted. So I'll yield the floor.
Can you say a little bit though about
Oh yeah, so then yeah, and that's the thing too.
I mean, musician here.
Yeah, so then here's the thing I realized about being meant to be at Prairie School. Prairie was the first place I saw a flyer in the hallway in 7th grade, when a grade that I had been telling myself I should have skipped. 7th grade, I was at Prairie and I saw a flyer that said every school in Racine County, and I had been like cheating on myself, like, you went to a different county, you didn't belong in that county. No, every school in Racine County gets to have one band in the Battle of the Bands. So at 13, I started my first band, and my drummer was 11. And then I went to Prairie, and at Prairie, they have a communications class. And like I said before, it's art, music, and physical education can get your kids in the flow state at school if you do it right. But they got to be engaged. But so I get to Prairie, and they have a comm class, and that's when to Rudy's point earlier about our video we did, I did that in an hour because I've been doing it since I was 13, because that's what I did when they sent me to the private school. I didn't eat lunch because I didn't tell mom. I didn't tell mom that I couldn't afford lunch tickets. I would just go to the communications lab and make music videos when I was like 13, 14, 15 through the lunch period. And instead of eating I mean, I would bring some food, I'd bring a sandwich in there, but I would go in there and self-isolate and make videos. And then I was also, after that, I would go write songs. And then I would go home and practice the songs. And then I would draw flyers. And so it was all those three things. It was all art, physical, and then, so that's pretty much it. And then, and now when it comes time, it's like the Bible says, when God says to Moses, what's in your hand? And practice makes perfect. All those things, they all make sense because it all comes from a place. You know what I'm saying?
And have you felt like over those periods of kind of recovering from the different traumas, at the times when you were making music and making art, that you were in a healing place, and the times that you distanced yourself, perhaps it was different?
Rudy and I spoke of this earlier because our mother reminded me. So I went over there the other day, like a week ago, and I'm playing guitar in my dad's guitar in the living room. And she goes, hey, you should play that one song. You should play that cover song. And I go, what cover song are you talking about? I played a couple. She's like, no, not that one. It's a different one. But she meant was a song that I had written, but I had explained it to her as if I didn't write it, because I felt at the time, and I told the people that around me at that time in 2010, which is before I went into jail, but after I got the DUI, I started writing this song, and what I told myself was, Aaron, if you're worth your weight, if you deserve to be on this earth and you are such a good musician, play your guitar right now and write a hit. And then I just started writing and stuff just came out. And then that song that my mom goes, can you play it? I played it. And as I'm listening to myself, I'm like, it came out of me. I didn't come up with this. It came out of me. And it was the way that I feel like that's the way that God feels about me. Because the chorus goes, if you try to leave me, I'll catch you and bring you back by my side. It's a really catchy song. It's a really lovey song. And she goes, I thought the whole time, I was like, what girl is he talking about? And I told her, it's not about a girl, it's about myself. That's how much God loves me. But I wrote it in a time when I was like, you are worthless. If you're worth anything, you'll write a good song. And that's what happened. That's what came out, you know?
Cool. Appreciate your sharing.
Yeah.
Want to, sorry, 1 second. Want to kind of wrap up on the chapter 4, and it does conclude actually with a statement that says altered states can lead to altered traits. And Kotler there describes some research that shows that repeated peak experiences can lead to personal transformation, people actually becoming more ethical and empathetic, and then in translating that into their kind of professional life leads to success, not surprisingly. And he cites some data showing that fewer than 5% of us make it from what's described as a self-authoring stage of personal development to self-transforming, which is kind of the highest stage of personal development. And he mentions a few examples of some activities like meditation, martial arts, and other state-shifting practices that those 5 to 10% of people who have achieved personal transformation tend to practice as central parts of their lives to stay in flow more regularly. Robert, I want to give you a chance to share. As you've observed others and worked on your own development, what connections between peak states and personal growth have you seen and experienced?
Oh man, tons. But as of my most recent, I can relate to the last statement, altered states can lead to altered traits. But for someone that might seem lofty. So for me, I desired some things different for my life, professionally, personally, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And so I had to take inventory of those things and ask, like, what is it going to take for me to achieve those things? Well, one of those things was to change a state of my being, which is to wake up at 4 a.m. I didn't know what I was going to do at 4 a.m. when I woke up. I didn't have it all planned out. I just said, if I start training my body to wake up at 4 a.m., eventually I figure out what I'm supposed to be doing at that time. And so that's the plan I went with. And so that altered state of like, you know, shocking myself out at 4 a.m., training my body to now go to sleep at 10 p.m., you know, those altered, like that choice altered a lot of states in my life. It altered when I went to bed. It altered, you know, when I ate in terms of breakfast, you know, was I going to eat at 4 or 8? And so eventually I started picking up traits of like meditation and things I wanted to do in that morning. And it became my morning routine. I thought that was a very powerful illustration in my own life of like how altered states can lead to those altered traits, really rewiring your brain. Because I'm telling you, it was not my thing at all. And then, you know, another impactful piece that you mentioned was the self-authoring to self-transforming. And being an author, I've always prided myself on writing the story of your life, right? Like authoring your story. It wasn't until this year where I really sat down at the beginning or end of last year and I really like etched out the next 6 months of my life, like very intentionally. And I think that is more of the self-transforming aspect, where you're proactively deciding where your life goes, as opposed to writing the next chapter according to how the previous one ended. Does that make sense, Rudy?
Yes.
Okay. And so I think that when those two things coexist is when peak performance and personal growth exists. Because, you know, every time I struggle getting up at 4 a.m., I think about the things that I've accomplished before my day even starts, the day before and the day prior. And then that pushes me to get, you know, even more done. So that raises that performance, you know, up to, I haven't reached my peak yet, but, you know, the more personal growth that I gain in chasing it helps me peak out in my performance in shortened time spans that I normally would take probably longer to accomplish.
Great examples. I appreciate those. Thank you, Robert. So moving into chapter 5, you know, Kotler, he starts digging deeper into some of the more recent learning in neurocognition, in which it's been found that those body and brain connections, like what Robert was just alluding to around, you know, kind of forcing his body to be up at 4 a.m. and then, you know, the brain doing some things in response, those connections may allow us to actually deal with stress better and get into flow quicker. And this is illustrated not only by martial arts, which we've mentioned, and yoga as well, but also more recently extreme sports. Jay, can you share some insights on this connection from your work maybe with Spartan Race or your work as a coach and an educator? Lisa?
You're in a difficult situation. It's a challenging situation. So if you're wrestling somebody, it's not like you're thinking about, you know, your grocery list or, you know, what grade you got on this test. You're thinking about the situation in front of you, and it takes your mind off of everything else. Similar thing in an obstacle course race. If you're climbing over an 8-foot wall, you're not thinking about, you know, the problems that you have. You're thinking about, how am I going to get over this wall? So you got to give yourself that level challenge. We actually at our school here, when it's in school learning, for the past 8 years, we've had a group come out and, you know, every weekend they put an obstacle course, you know, race. They put, you know, walls and big things to carry and ropes to climb and stuff out on our football field. So all of our students can go for free. And the purpose for that is we're pretty high, you know, academic school, and all these students are concerned about their grades, and they're concerned about getting into what they deem is the best college, even though they're all good. And, you know, the purpose of having that obstacle course out there is so if they go out and do it, it's going to take their mind off of all those things. It's going to put them more in a flow state. Now, the tricky part, and Bear can probably add to this, is that most people don't want to put out that effort to get to that flow state. They want to do it in an easier way. Now, I'm of the mind that you should have to work for it. It shouldn't be something easy. You should have to work for it a little bit. But if you do, you know, putting out the work, wrestling that Bear can talk about, you know, obstacle course racing, if you do that and it's challenging enough, then it's going to take your mind off everything else and kind of lose that ego.
Excellent examples. I appreciate that. So moving on, and like you said, I'm going to reach out to Bear next. In chapter 5, Kotler also talks about how research and application have demonstrated how predictive some of our body's reactions can be to our levels of stress and then success in different areas. And he points out that transformational leaders can not only regulate their own nervous systems, they can even regulate other people's nervous systems. And so he says that emergent leaders can create a powerful group flow experience. And with technology, actually, in some places, sensors can track and train people to do this better. But in terms of that quote about emergent leaders creating a powerful group flow experience, Bear, that got me thinking about you and your Monster Lab. Can you share with us a little bit about how you kind of set the stage for your fitness clients if they're coming in, from a hard day's work, they're not feeling motivated to train with you? Maybe it's an early morning workout. What do you do to kind of change their nervous system, so to speak?
Man, I wish I had a scientific answer for you. I really don't.
I want the raw Monster Lab answer.
Yeah, you know what? If you wake up and you get in your car and you drive here, you already know what you're in for. You shouldn't need me to get you motivated. Once you get going, I'll come with the motivation, but you need to get here and get working. That should be motivation enough.
Yeah, and it sounds like some of what you're saying is, once you actually put the body into action, the mind will follow suit. Is that right?
Yep. I tell everybody, once you're strong enough with your mind, once you can figure out, and that's what it takes to is, sorry to cut myself off there, but a lot of times, you get into these situations where you're working out and you get guys that are there, you can see it's coming. You can see they're going to break, you know what I mean? Like it's about done, and then I push them one more round or maybe two more rounds if that's what I need to get to. But my whole purpose is not just to change people's bodies, but I want people to understand that you are, what we call, superhuman, really. Mm-hmm. Anybody's capable of getting into this flow state. Anybody's capable of doing things that you could never imagine that you could do. Like,
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one of the things that I love, and I appreciate that you've got the Monster Lab as your backdrop there, is just the fact that, again, if you're coming from, the office, and these days maybe the office is just, in your home office, in your basement, whatever. But when you step into that Monster Lab, the whole environment is different. So you're looking, at a whole new, backdrop, and things, smell different, they sound different. So it kind of helps, change your mindset in a lot of ways. And I think, while everybody that there may be like, people are emailing with or talking with are, talking all business and everything, when they walk in with you, they know that, all you care about is, pick up that weight, swing that rope, get to work on this level. Kind of shifts their mind. And I feel like you kind of, I've seen some of the videos that you play when you've got clients working in the background. And I can see by the look on your face that they know, what they need to get done, like you said, when they get in there. So it sounds like there might be some things that you can learn about, what's happening behind the scenes. But it sounds like they definitely feel your vibe, and they get on your vibe when they get in there.
For sure. That's one of the biggest things too, is when we do a lot of group workouts. Like every Sunday, I do a group workout with usually between 3 and like 6 of us, 6 guys that I've been working with, and girls, if they're ready to go. But we basically a keep up with me workout day on Sunday, and it gets really, really fun for me. Most of it, it gets really intense. I've had a few people puke. I've had a few people drop out, but it's always fun.
Yeah, I like it. And even the messaging around, making monsters is like they're thinking about themselves in a different light than they were thinking about themselves, even on the way over. So I think what you're doing is great. One of the most fascinating topics explored in Stealing Fire for me, and I think for some of the others on the discussion, is this new field that Kyler discusses, different, brain research. They call it neural this, neural that. So he's talking about neurotheology. And in this new field, new brain imaging technology has actually allowed researchers to understand what's happening in the brain when people achieve a wide range of heightened spiritual experiences. So this could be, out of body experiences. This could be what, the Pentecostals like us call speaking in tongues, or also others call unity, the sense of becoming like one with the universe. So all these different states, actually what they found is that they come about when you concentrate so intently that the researchers have found that the brain actually switches off this usual orientation to the boundaries of our bodies. So when that gets switched off to conserve energy and allow you to concentrate, all of a sudden you feel different. You feel like again, you're one with the universe. And so as they've dug into, these different spiritual situations, and, another example I thought was cool along these lines was, there's this one faith tradition where they developed this whole meditation system. And in this meditation system, you actually end up creating this doppelganger vision. So you see another version of yourself when you do this meditation. And so the researchers took a look at what was happening with this combination of breathing and head movements. And the researchers found that by doing those different, breathing and head movement techniques, what happens is that you actually confuse your brain system of understanding its position. And so while these various faith traditions have, developed these methods of achieving these states over centuries in some cases, the researchers have actually been able to recreate the effects with what we might call secular techniques. So I'm going to put this out to a few of you guys, and everyone's welcome to jump in. But Robert, Aaron, Jay, I know you guys all identify as believers. I'm curious for you guys, what reflections have you had in reading about some of these types of findings in neurotheology?
Well, I know for me, it really, again, illuminated some things for me, because one of my practices when I'm really feeling out of whack, or really just like feeling like far from flow, I'm stuck. I have to go into the woods, and I put my earbuds in, and I close. There's a space that I go when like no one is going to come near me, and I literally close my eyes and I sing like a playlist to the top of my lungs that like encourages me to keep going. And I can't open my eyes, there are deer running around and all types of animals, but to really just sit there and make myself not do that. After a while, I forget that's even a challenge. And usually I wake up with a bunch of snot, not wake up, but I come back to consciousness with like, I'm all a mess, but I feel ready. So that's the closest I've been able to identify with that oneness, just in surrounding and everything, being able to exist, and just exist, literally just exist, for a minute is really tough, but that's the only place I've been able to find it so far for me.
Cool. Jay, any thoughts around this? Like these findings, do they have any reflections on them?
Yeah, isn't it the goal of every religion that you're going to get to a higher plane? I mean, in Christianity, for example, it's prayer. There's meditation. In Buddhism, there's chants, and you're trying to get yourself to a different spiritual level, one where you're connected to the universe, connected to God, that whole thing. And I think, whatever religion you have, as you're getting there, there's got to be something good about it. If all religions are pointing that direction. So people have been trying, for centuries to make this happen. And some people completely devote their lives to it. And again, I ask, is there anything wrong with that if it makes you feel like you're at a different level and at a more spiritual level, so you feel one with whatever God you choose to follow?
Great point. And I think it is fascinating in terms of that acronym of STIR, STER, those four elements. That the very first one is selflessness. So you think about different manifestations of that. What would that look like? If you're thinking about others, obviously you're thinking less about yourself. So I think that's a really interesting connection as well to different faith traditions. Wanted to switch gears a little bit. As Aaron shared in promoting this evening's discussion, we do find in this book some important reminders of also some simple strategies to get our minds into these desired states. They talk about power poses, like the Superman pose and things like that you can do physically to get your mind in a better place, to working out, like we've talked about, to also some simple things like getting sunshine, listening to the right music. So I wanted to ask each of you guys if you could share one simple practical way that you use to kind of get your mind right, so to speak, or where you want it to be closer to a flow state when you notice that you're not in flow or you're not in a good state of mind.
I know for me, what I'll do is some of my hardest work I'll schedule in the morning. And then after that, I'll really tackle like the hardest thing, sit down for, let's say, an hour, knowing that right after I'll both reward myself and allow myself to kind of refresh and recharge, I'll go for a walk. And what I found is it really allows me to just kind of center myself, come back, and I end up being more productive. And it could just be around the block, but it's just simple kind of, okay, I have something to look forward to. And then when I come back with a clear mind, it allows me to be more productive. And it puts me in just a better flow state. And I think overall through the day, it leads to better flow.
Bear, why don't you go ahead? Oh, sorry. Robert, are you speaking up? Go ahead, Robert. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Robert.
Can't hear you.
I think for me, one of the techniques that to get your mind right that I say I'll take away from reading this book, and then I'll share one that I use is what it talked about when it talked about not trying to solve everything by thinking. That was really powerful for me because I pride myself on thought. Like I want to be known in the school of thought when all this is said and done. But to know that that's finite and it has its proper place in our society and its proper place in our state of flow, to be able to step back and meditate a bit to reduce the urge to think around problems is a practice that I'm going to take away to start to, increase my ability to get into a flow or a good state of mind. But I take a walk, like Mustafa said. Personally, for me, I have to get my body moving, and I have to typically probably be in nature to get myself, back and ready to tackle, like Mustafa said.
Great. Jay, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simply gratitude for me. That's the easiest way, because typically if I'm thinking negative thoughts, those are what are going to cloud my mind. And if I want to just clear everything out, you can tell if you want to get in flow state, you just want to clear your mind. If I'm going running, it's to clear my mind, get myself into some level of flow state. And gratitude does that for me. If I just say, hey, I've got these bad thoughts, I'm like, gosh, it could be so much worse. I've actually got a really good life here. Then it takes those thoughts away. If you look at it from a wrestling perspective, or any sport, if you're like worried about what's happening and stuff, and are you going to win and things like that, then you're not going to be in flow state. But if you're like, gosh, this is so great that I get to do this, all of a sudden that stuff goes away. So it's an entry point. It's not guaranteed you're going to get into deep flow doing that, but it's certainly going to clear your mind and get you closer to some level of flow.
Excellent. I'm going to go to Bear and then Mustafa.
With me, it's actually, I think I'm so active. It's actually a lot of what Robert said too. I'm so active on a daily basis, like constantly moving, nonstop. So, and actually it was our last discussion that made me want to try this. I don't remember exactly who brought it up, but that's what it was. So every morning now, like first thing that I do, after I get out of the shower or whatever, I come out here, and before I do anything, I don't do anything at all for 10 minutes. And I've been sticking to it, and kind of like what he was saying too about clearing your mind, no thoughts, you know what I mean? And a lot of times for me is I get into that flow state or like the beginning stages of it so often because of the workouts that I do and how often I'm doing things. And like I said before, the passion, everything that I put into everything that I'm doing now. And I think somebody said something last discussion that resonated with me about it was like some sort of meditation, So I started doing this where every morning it's just 10 minutes. That's all it is. I just sit here and I don't do a thing. I might play music, but I don't think about anything. I just sit here with my eyes open and or closed or whatever, but and just kind of like give myself a minute to just not do anything at all. And then when the alarm goes off, when I'm done, it's like, now my day goes, you know what I mean? But I honestly think that it's been every single day has been a lot different since then, just because I think it is, and all it is 10 minutes, but it's nice just to be able to get yourself in like a completely thoughtless zone before you have to start your day. I've been loving it.
Excellent. Really glad to hear that. How about you, Mustafa?
First, Bear, absolute kudos to that. I think that's fantastic and inspired by that. And then Jay, inspired by your piece of gratitude, and it kind of ties in. I'm really grateful to be the son of two fantastic immigrants. And I think to your point of just like looking like things can be a lot worse, and just having that perspective. And at times it might just be sitting down with my dad and kind of hearing the stories of what it was like for him to come to the US, and leading to that kind of gratitude. And I think one of the other things that ties into that is mentoring and volunteering. I think both of those can really, it gets to that selflessness component that they talk about with flow, that in many ways allows you to both heal and use that gratitude to really kind of go through a flow state. And it's interesting because it comes up right now that I love mentoring college students as well as other startup founders. And it's been a staple throughout my week to just kind of pay it forward. And, Jay, when you brought that idea of gratitude up, it's really fascinating to go, actually, a lot of the times just having that conversation and understanding that, wow, yeah, I have something to share, and I've been through something, and they're really grateful for it. It reminds me and recenters perspective. So I thought that was a great point. And building mentoring into the week could be a really great way to get into a flow state. It kicks into gratitude and perspective very quickly.
Aaron, how about you? A simple strategy that you would suggest for people to get their mind right when they're feeling like they're a little out of it?
The mic's not working there.
All right, we'll let him get that squared away. One of the things that I would share, and like I said, we'll share for folks who are interested, the new video that we dropped. Basically, it's a couple things put together, maybe 3 specific strategies on that video that we released yesterday. It's my national wrestling championship back from when I was 16 years old. But the subtitle is it's my first experience, first time achieving or reaching the flow state. And so a few things that kind of led up to that were, like Aaron alluded to earlier, kind of that self-isolation in terms of the the week before at the training camp, finding those times to, like you guys were saying, kind of get alone and not really necessarily be with your thoughts, but just be able to clear your mind. And for myself, real specifically as well, since from the kind of brain standpoint, we talked about trying to turn off that inner critic in our mind. And so, when you're thinking about all the things you have to do and your task list, your to-do list, and everything else, you're in these, high frequency, beta waves going on in your brain. And so to be able to kind of downshift, into this alpha state and maybe even, theta state or whatever, one thing that I found helpful is certain types of music. And so in the video, I mentioned that for myself at that kind of age in that moment, for that week, I think at the time we were still using cassette tapes, and I think it was basically like a single. I just kept on playing that thing over and over and over. And so you guys might recall a group called Enigma. So they had this song "Return to Innocence," and in the background you hear this, this kind of like tribal, essentially like a chant, And so it was in reflecting afterward, understanding that actually probably helped me get into the flow state that I was in when I competed in that tournament. And in the video, mentioned that, kind of like evidence of having been in the flow state was, again, in terms of those 4 components: selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, and richness. All those pieces were there, and in particular, timelessness. There's a moment in the match, kind of a pivotal moment, where in my mind, what I experienced was, this guy is coming in, on an attack, like, basically in slow motion. And so I felt like I had all the time in the world to decide and do what I had to do to basically put him to his back. And in watching the tape, it still kind of blows me away that it was at full speed, because it didn't feel like it was at full speed. And And in that tournament where I faced 9 different people, I gave up a total of 4 points, which is pretty unheard of in the sport of wrestling. So I wanted to share that with the world. And again, I felt like the music had been helpful at that point, and even today it's helpful to me to listen to that type of in some ways like EDM type of music that can kind of like get my mind kind of downshifting a bit and in that more relaxed state. So that's helpful for me, along with some of the other pieces that you guys mentioned around working out. It looks like Aaron is having a little trouble getting reconnected with us. I was going to give him a chance to share a little bit more about some of his thoughts just regarding the fact that with a lot of what we're trying to do, again, we're trying to essentially whether it's taboos or just different expectations from society around the way we're supposed to move and operate, try to get back to our more natural state of just being and doing the things that we know we can do as a child, just exploring and being ourselves. So I'm going to give Aaron, are you able to is the audio working yet? No, looks like it sounds like a no, sorry. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to give a final word. Looks like we might have about a minute each for that. Mustafa, how about you? You have a closing thought for today?
Sure. Okay. So one of the major pieces that stood out both of this chapter and just of this book has really been being very intentional about putting yourself into flow states. Mm-hmm. And, Robert, I loved how you brought up the point earlier that one of the pieces that has been really transformative for you is you don't have to think through everything. I think one of the common themes through this book is actually kind of getting back in touch with your body and getting back in touch with like, okay, wait, how am I feeling in this moment in the now? And just being very conscious about that has been deeply transformative. And, through our conversation, what's nice is, there are all these different strategies, like, Rudy borrowed from you the idea of chanting music and just going, let me try this out. And I really like that sound. And for some odd reason, like there's just the right resonance inside. So it's trying to do the things that, and Jay, I thought you said this beautifully earlier, right? Moving and just modeling those wrestlers that were just having fun with it has been a lot of trying this with the book too. Oh, well, try that on, and this feels good and it makes it fun again. So that's been the big takeaways. Don't be afraid to try this stuff, and if some of it's weird, just throw it out and find the stuff that works for you.
Excellent. Bear, how about you?
I honestly just want to say thank you to everybody involved, because like I said, this is something that's usually really, really out of my comfort zone, but I'm really having a fun time with it. And I'm honestly learning a lot about myself as I'm going a little deeper into this book too. So I just appreciate you guys, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Well, appreciate that. Jay, how about you?
This is a good book because it leads to, I don't agree with everything, and it leads to questions. And a big part of the book is, taking shortcuts to get to this flow state, whether they be technological, pharmaceutical, whatever. And I have to kind of wrap my head around that. Is it something, am I willing to take shortcuts to get to a flow state, or should I have to work for it? And not quite decided. I mean, traditionally, and this is the way I've always thought, I don't want to take shortcuts for anything. However, are they a good thing? Or are they not? And maybe we'll talk about that next time.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, Rudy, I wanted to touch quickly on what you said in regards to purpose in the addressing of the book. And I guess a final thought would simply be to find that purpose in which you want to steal fire from heaven. Prometheus stealing it without a cause kind of caused chaos. Mm-hmm. But becoming a person that can come into a mindset of group consciousness to be able to accomplish a purpose or a goal, I think drives my flow state a lot easier in terms of just being in flow for a purpose and reason, not just for personal optimization. Really helps it to be a continuum for me. So that would be what I would share.
I really love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, tying back to some of what we talked about before regarding the kind of neurotheology piece, is like, is it okay to take a shortcut in terms of getting to those, a certain state that maybe, again, it was a really long way of doing it that was developed over centuries and what have you. If the purpose is to make the world a better place, if the purpose is to, help make your community a better place and those around you, maybe again, that's a place where there's a healthy marriage with science, where science is helping you achieve those noble goals in a faster way. So I love those points. Thank you all, and look forward to continuing the conversation in 2 weeks.
Peace out, everybody.